But we're not really cheerleading for Martin Luther the person, because he was most definitely a flawed individual. We aren't cheering for the Lutheran Church as a whole only, because the Lutheran Church also is flawed. I mean, it's made up of people. It's hard not to be. What we're cheering for is what's still happening, right? We're cheering for the fact that the Reformation isn't something that happened 501 years ago. We're cheering for the fact that the Reformation is who we are. The Reformation is a promise. The Reformation is a hope. The Reformation is a gathering of people who says, we are loved by God. We want to live into that love. And to quote somebody I know over here, let me show you how. It's not just the St. Philip slogan right now. It's kind of what we are and who we are as faith. I am loved by God. I love God imperfectly. Let me show you how. That's who we are. That's what we're doing. That's how we're doing it. So, I'm going to invite you to do something that Lutherans don't do all the time again, too. I want you to pick up your bulletin, and I want you to flip to the page where we have the third reading. That's that reading from Romans. And I want us to read verse 28 together. It's the very, very last verse, the very, very last sentence. For we hold that a person is justified by faith apart from works prescribed by the law. That is why we're here today, right? That is what started Martin Luther's spiral. It was a good spiral most of the time. But that's kind of what started Martin Luther off on his path of saying, I love God because God loves me, and I'm never going to make it if I'm required to do all of the things. And the good news is, God doesn't require me to do all of the things. God asks of us that we respond to God's love, and it's God's love that comes first. God doesn't ask for us to follow all of the letter of the law to get to the place where we earn God's love. Thanks be to God. God asks us to respond to God's love that has already been perfectly granted to us. So now we're going to look at that reading from John. Now, I like to think of the disciples sometimes as a little bit whiny. Because if you look at it, a lot of times what they're saying sounds like it should best be delivered in a whine. Jesus says, I'm going to make you free. And the disciples say, but Jesus, we've never been slaves. We don't need to be free. It's not the first time that the disciples sound a little bit whiny in their responses to Jesus. Jesus offers us the world, and we respond with but we like what we've got. We don't really need to change, right? We're sitting here together on Reformation Sunday celebrating the world that is changing around us and our faith that changes us, even though we're good human people and we kind of like to stay where things are comfortable. I don't think I'm the only one who stays quiet sometimes when maybe my voice should be heard, or stays home maybe when my presence should be felt. Because the thing is, Jesus is right. We are slaves. We are in bondage. That's why we have our confession and forgiveness each week, to remind us who we are. But we don't have just the confession part. That's the exciting part. We don't have the confession where we say we confess that we are in bondage to sin. That's not the end of the sentence. The end of the sentence is Jesus saying, but you have been made free. And the exciting part is that we're not just made free on Sundays when we hear those words of forgiveness. We are made free over and over and over again all day, every day, every minute, every second, every millisecond. As often as we need new hope and new beginnings, we have new hope and new beginnings. Sin gets in our way of being who God has created us to be. And often, I think we are the embodiment of sin that gets in our own way to be who God has called us and created us to be. At youth group on Wednesday night, we studied angels, demons, and ghosts. And we looked at what the Bible said about angels and demons and ghosts, and we found some things that we expected. And we found some things that we weren't so sure that we expected. We found some things that blew our minds. And we found some things that confirmed what we feared. Those demons aren't just over there that we can walk away from. Those demons that get in the way of our being with God are a part of ourselves. Think about it. How often do you stand in your own way to live into who God calls you to be? How often are you your own biggest stumbling block? We talked this morning about kind of cheerleading today. The fact that it's our homecoming, it's our celebration, it's Reformation. We're cheering for the changes that are happening. Even if we're not very good at them, we're cheering for them. Because the things that we're not very good at are the things that we most need cheered for, right? I mean, on the day that your alarm goes off and you're already awake and smiling and ready to get on with your day, that's not the day that you most need your coffee. The day that the alarm goes off and you're dragging yourself out of bed and not so sure you're going to make it, that's the day that you need to hear, "I'm glad you got up today." It's the days that we do the things that are really hard for us to do that we most need to hear from God and from each other. You are living into who God calls us to be. We are living into an ongoing reformation every day. We are called to live into God's love. We are called to speak God's love and God's peace in a world that is so often torn by anything but peace, anything but love. I'm not going to stand here today and tell you that we have to agree with, or that we do agree with everything that each other thinks. We don't. And that's okay. It is okay to not agree. But I can promise you that showing up at a synagogue with a gun, or a baseball game with a gun, or putting pipe bombs or poison in the mail to elected officials isn't the way to have a conversation about those things that we disagree. We are called as children of God to disagree in love and to disagree in peace, because it is through those conversations in love that we find our new way. We find our reformation and our hope for peace in the world. God invites us to live into God's love by loving ourselves and loving each other, because it is in that love that we love God back. So I invite you this Reformation Sunday to cheer for all of the ways that we are stretching and growing and changing in ways that aren't always comfortable, so that we can live into God's love for each of us. Amen.